In a landmark decision today, the Supreme Court of India has held that Indian citizens have a fundamental right to privacy guaranteed under the Constitution of India. But it's not just Aadhaar which gets affected by this, because this is a broader ruling. It's under the Constitution. We have a fundamental right. The court wasn't purely looking at Aadhaar in this case. So what exactly are the other kind of consequences which we can see come up here? Now, there are two which come to mind immediately. One is what happens to the criminalization of homosexuality under Section 377 of the IPC, and two, the fact that marital rape continues to not be a crime under the Indian Penal Code. As most of you will be aware, under Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, what are known as acts against nature are criminalized. Now, one of the things which is considered an act against nature, against the course of nature, is consensual sexual acts between adults of the same gender. Basically, homosexual acts, even if they're consensual, are considered a crime. Now, this has been one of the most controversial provisions in the Indian Penal Code, and in 2009, the Delhi High Court said that, you know what, this provision is unconstitutional because two consenting adults who want to engage in homosexual acts should be allowed to do so. So that's what the Delhi High Court said in 2009. In 2014, however, the Supreme Court of India held that, you know what, that's actually incorrect. You know, Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code is perfectly okay. There is nothing wrong with criminalizing the consensual homosexual acts. Now, that's what the Supreme Court said in 2014. What we saw today was two judgments specifically calling out what was said in the 2014 Supreme Court decision. So first we had Justice Chandrachud coming out and saying, you know what, by looking at the question of privacy in terms of whether how many people care about that right, the Supreme Court in 2014 got it wrong. Because what the Supreme Court in 2014 said was, you know what, nobody's right to privacy is violated by this criminalization of homosexuality, because, you know, it's a minuscule minority of people who could potentially get affected. Now, this is what was said in 2014, and Justice Chandrachud said, you know what, that's garbage basically. It's a completely flawed reasoning. It doesn't stand, and that actually the right to privacy is there. It does encompass your sexual orientation, your sexual preferences, and what you want to do with it. So that's a pretty huge step for the court to have taken here, and this was backed up later by Justice Kaul as well. The right to privacy encompasses your sexual orientation and sexual preferences, and as a result, this is going to go on to play in the review petition which is already filed against the 2014 decision to say that, look, that 2014 petition was wrong and consensual homosexual acts should be decriminalized. The other big question is, will this judgment now affect the issue of marital rape? Now, for a long time, the Indian Penal Code has had an exception to the act of rape by saying that if the man and woman are married, it cannot be rape. Now, this is a really tricky situation, because what you're trying to say is, what this essentially means is that the law of the land says that once a man and woman are married, every time they have sex, it's entirely consensual. Even if the woman really doesn't want to have sex at that point, it doesn't matter. This judgment today could potentially have a huge impact on that because of a key element of what it considers to be part of privacy, and that is the right of human dignity. Now, what the judgment has done is they've accepted submissions by many of the lawyers and the petitioners who said that, look, human dignity is a crucial part of the preamble and a crucial part of Article 21, which deals with life and liberty in the Indian Constitution. By saying that privacy is intrinsically linked to dignity, this allows us a chance to now try and revisit the issue of marital rape in a judgment before the Supreme Court, in arguments before the Supreme Court, by asking them to say that, look, if dignity is important, dignity specifically mentioned to be there within marriage, if the dignity of a woman is so intrinsic, then her decision over whether or not to have sex with her husband is a private decision of hers to make, and that needs to be protected under the Constitution. And if that's the case, the exception in the Indian Penal Code which says that rape rape in a marriage is not actually rape for the purposes of the law, that would become unconstitutional, and that's a huge step again to take. Now, this one, unlike say with the Nas Foundation judgment, which is already being reviewed, marital rape is being challenged, but this issue of privacy has not yet per se been raised. But we can hope that in the case which is currently ongoing in the Delhi High Court, this will start to come up. They will be able to actually now say that, you know what, actually, given that dignity and that privacy is an intrinsic aspect of dignity, and dignity is an aspect of fundamental rights, what we can say is that no woman should be forced to give up her dignity. No woman should be forced to give up her dignity by the fact that her private decision over whether or not to have sex is taken away just because she's married. And that is another huge potential far-reaching consequence that today's judgment will have.